Good evening, everyone. My name is Parth Shah. I'm a motion capture supervisor and a virtual production specialist at Green Studios. And along with me are this wonderful panelists who are there in front of me, whom I have the privilege to know them as a colleagues from my industry. And these are the people whom I definitely reached out when I heard the topic of this session. They were the first people that came in my thoughts. So I'll start with the introduction for each of them, and then we can jump right into the questions that we have for each of them. So to start with, first we have Ms. Atul Patel, a BFA from MS University. She started her career as an art director at ad agency McCann Erickson. Later, she completed her MFA at Academy of Arts, San Francisco. Post-graduating, her first job was at Prime Focus Los Angeles as a visual effects matte painter, feature films like Avatar and Tree of Life. Later, she went on to work at Rhythm News India as texture painter on movies like Life of Pi, Snow White, and The Huntsman, and the RIPD. She is a winner of multiple awards, including gold and silver medals at Eddie USA, and her work has been featured in industry publications like CMYK. In 2013, her passion for advertising and films led her to start her production house, Post and Shutter, that focuses on all aspects of advertising commercials. She has produced TV commercials and directed CGI for clients like Unilever, FPV, Carlton, Caprice, TVH, and Birla. She recently manages VFX House Digital District India as Chief Executive Officer and leads the creative team as a VFX producer and supervisor. She is a member of VES since 2017. She is also a recipient of Unreal Fellowship as part of the first Women's Creative Program. She is a profound nature lover and works towards reducing her carbon footprint wherever she can. Ask her about green waste, compositing, or creating a mini forest in the city, and you will get a long list of solutions. So that's an interesting section of bio. But the next up, we have Karan Parekh. Karan is an immersive technologist with expertise in real-time workflow. Karan is a master mentor in Unreal Engine's Virtual Production Fellowship Program and India's first Unreal authorized instructor. Greenland's mission is to educate and empower India's massive creative technology talent pool. Greenland is currently training 40 plus studios, including to transition to real-time workflows and virtual production. Karan is focused on using technology to blur the lines between real and virtual worlds. His areas of expertise include virtual production, XR, and simulations. His collaborative works has been displayed at some of the most prestigious art galleries, public spaces, and museums, such as Times Square in New York, Art House, correct me if I'm wrong, Art House in DC, the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. So that's an impressive, again, introduction of Karan, whom I know as my colleague and was as well engineering. Uh, Again, the next up is Sandeep Kamal. I mean, whom I've been known as the senior VFX supervisor in the industry from past 20 years. So to start with, Sandeep Kamal is a Mumbai-based filmmaker and a VFX consultant. He has worked on CG and VFX supervision, apart from being a hands-on 3D artist. Sandeep has worked with Prime Focus as head of department for CG and VFX departments in its early days. Apart from being associated with many VFX startups that include iCube Studios, Evidence Studio, Intermezzo Studio, Drishyam VFX, One Life, and Limitless Studio in past. These days, he focuses more on the use of new technology for storytelling while directing and producing TV commercials as well as short films. So, I mean, as you also we have this amazing panelist, on the session. Because we do have such a long list of questions on our way, we can probably start with the Q&A. So I would like to thank all the panelists, three of you, to giving your time for this panel and sharing your insights on for the sake. To start with, I would like to start with Karan. Since you've been using Unreal Engine for past many years, How was your experience while using it now for animation and VFX?
Yeah, I think it's been an incredible experience because, I think I come from the world of games, interactivity, and VR, and I've kind of, migrated more into visual effects and animation for some of our projects. Not to say I've left games behind, but I think what's incredible is, you know, how effective game engines can be to help you plan even linear content using an interactive tool to drive creative decisions. And I think how quickly we can iterate in doing that is probably one of the most compelling things. And or at least early on, I think there were a lot of, when people looked at game engines, they purely thought of them as, things only used to make games. But I really like the way my co-founder at Green Rain puts this, Apurva. So he basically refers to game engines as 3D operating systems, and I think that's becoming increasingly true. When you look at technology like the metaverse, and ultimately that's what we are using it as. It's a 3D operating system in the realm of VFX and animation. So I think that's my note, and I think uh, there's some interesting things to learn from games workflows, specifically with the optimization, and also how it could eventually just branch into non-linear storytelling and interactive cinema. I think that's like a whole different parallel discussion, but I think that's something that excites me a lot.
Good. Thank you, Karan. And I think the next question is both for Rutul and Samir, so we can start with Rutul and then followed by Samir. The question is at what stage would you generally recommend or use game engines in your project? It can be animation or VFX both.
Okay. So for us, we do multiple things like whether it be commercial, short film, or feature film, or any series. So far we have adapted it whenever we are going to be fully 3D. So like whenever it is live action, it's still limited because of the geographic location that we operate in. Like for example, in Paris as well as in India, we do not have LED stage to take advantage of the technology. So recently we did a couple of projects where we kind of did a small cheat by using like big television on the window and use the gaming technology to do the set extension through the window. And when it comes to 3D, like for example, any fully 3D commercial can be completely pulled in Unreal. So when we plan it, as we are drawing a storyboard in back of our mind, we already start putting things together in Unreal as well. Like I have a generalist on a standby. Whenever I'm drawing any storyboard, generalist will start putting cameras and sequences together to for me to see that the story that I'm planning, the angle and the cameras and angles, if I do not have clear vision on exactly what angle I want to place particular shot at, then we just use Unreal for even a storyboard purpose. Sometimes for a previous purpose and sometimes for like animatic purpose, we use Unreal. And after we finish that and once we go in production, we start evaluating, do we have a ready asset or are we going to bring in ready assets from another software to Unreal and go from there onwards. So there are not such thing like, okay, once you, like earlier times, that once you have finished a certain level of work in your pre-production, then and then only you touch software. Unreal is so versatile that you can pretty much take it up to even think of an idea. Like, there are so many ready environments and assets. You can just put like dummy characters inside it just for you to feel what you have in your mind as a story, and some take screenshots of that and use that directly as your storyboard as well. So pretty much I can say from pre-production to post-production, any time, any level, and age is no bar. Like anybody from 15-year or 13-year-old who understands basics of computer can pretty much take up Unreal and start planning their content in it.
Thank you. I think that's well said. Because I've seen a lot of people, at different ages as well, getting trained into Unreal. So what's your thought about this?
Yeah, it's pretty much same. Thing is that I started my career in game industry only. So for me, game engine was my first thing, rendering engine. So we were working on our own engine and we were working on third party engine. Those were like early 97, 98 during that time. Graphic card were different over there. There used to be difference between graphic card and hardware accelerator. So some will work on DirectX, some will only work in OpenGL. So everything now things are blurred, and I used a lot of gaming technique in my when I came into VFX. So optimizing my scene, you have rendering resource, lack of rendering resource, so you optimize your scene just like game. So based on that, everything went on. Of late, systems have become powerful and cheaper. So renderings have become like much more affordable, and engines have gone much more powerful. So this gives us power to iterate our vision much faster. I'm not even talking about the final result, but most important part is visualizing your concept, your proof of concept. Okay, so you need to make your mock-up. You need to make a dummy. Prototyping your thought. So the game engine gives you a very quick and easy way to prototype your idea. So even for like photography, I mean, I can teach people photography without even giving them camera in hand. I can teach them virtually photography. So the game engine, as Karan said, it's like an operating system, 3D operating system. It gives you power to do a lot of things. Yes, I will still hold on to the thought of that it can give final pixel in every situation. No, it doesn't give in every situation, but in many time it gives. Okay, I have got project where 80% of my result is out of game engine, and then 20%. But sometimes whenever we get stuck in the last leg, because we have worked throughout the game engine and last leg the result is not coming good, we can take the whole thing to another system. Like we do something in Unreal and then take it to something like Octane Render. So we can find, because it's not the technology, it's we have to be ahead of the technology to figure out how to manipulate the technology, and if something is not available, find other ways to get the final result. So game engine is one big leap which has allowed us to shorten our prototyping time. Okay, and that's where we need to spend more time, ideation, thinking.
I totally agree, and I think that's something I really agree to, because game engine's involvement in pitchways is tremendous. I mean, I have a few directors, who wanted to pitch a project to a producer, and I believe the way they are utilized game engine, I mean, they never had a 3D software, but the way they downloaded the three assets from Pixels and Marketplace, and just for the pitchways purpose, the concept look at. I think it's made life easier for them as well for the pitchways, which you correctly mentioned about. The next question again, is it's for you, Sandeep, is if a project requires like an intense previs, and then a tech quiz after that, and needs to be shot on say a real-time composite or an LED video wall. Then how are your generally interactions with the director and DOP while proposing such production workflows?
You're asking me?
Yes, this go ahead.
So see, it's very easy for me to go and talk about all virtual production thing, but if my director and DOP has not done their homework, it's a waste of time. I mean, they need to have certain orientation in that field. So that's why I keep telling Karan and other people in Unreal thing that please get production designers, DOPs on board, because once they taste this, it's a blood. Once they taste it, they want to do it. Okay, so then it becomes easy for us to pitch, because see, VFX itself is a complicated thing, and you're bringing virtual production, which is it's like a rocket science. Like there's so many things to take care of. Like I may know everything, but while shooting, I may forget, something might slip out. So I need a team. Somebody will remember. Like before the shoot, I can remember. I know every step, but during the shoot, the pressure, I'll forget the step. I need the whole team to be aligned. So I need my DOP, my director, everybody to be aligned. So if my director is not ready, my DOP is not ready, I don't even recommend them. So it's like, who will take the blame? I mean, if something goes wrong, and everybody has to be held responsible. So think people have to come together to do. That's why I do this with small things like ad films and all. it's fine. Things are the stakes are very less. But when it is a bigger thing, and if I have bigger time volume, then I'll say, okay, I mean, first two days we might have teething issues, but after that everybody will be in the same page. So it's a process, but it's like I need to be convinced that my client is ready to do it. Not that I don't want to convince my client, but I want to be convinced that they are ready to do this.
Good. That's a good, good learning, I would say, because I never thought that way, that client also. I think that's highly true. Rutul, I mean, and Karan as well. Just to know your side as well, like I'm I'm not sure. I mean, how direct interaction you would have with the director in DOP, but what's your thought on this? I mean, has or if you want to share your experience that if you had with the director in DOP while convincing them, or introducing them to virtual production workflows, how has been your interaction? Has it been easy moving ahead, or to know your thoughts? Yeah. So, look at your mute, I think.
So my interactions till now is all at pre-production level and then not understanding and completely not going for virtual production. But I have been in a situation like where we were doing certain R&D on one of the projects, which was supposed to be shot completely on a physical film. And neither the director, DOP did understand a lot of VFX, but because they come from a very traditional VFX, so the idea of this virtual production is little bit too confusing. Like they do understand as for a face value, but they mistake it because we see a lot of ready content, and then we forget what all thing is gone behind it. Like it's not completely. Sometimes some of the projects, like even projects like Mandalorians, are not completely pushed out of Unreal. The rendering pipeline is entirely different. They have conceived it and they have used the gaming engine for the shoot purpose, but entire VFX has happened on the traditional pipeline. So there is a lot of combination, but then they see behind the scene, and then the expectation is, oh, why can't you do it? And then we have to tell them, oh, you have not set it up because your cameras, you do not have certain things that are already in play. You have to limit yourself and you have to first understand. So there are a lot of extensive conversations happening with multiple directors and producers, but due to limited understanding of client and sometimes limited understanding of director, they get scared and they end up shooting on a conventional way so far. When it comes to our Paris run, they are a lot more open. Like a lot of directors are experimenting, a lot of new directors who want to do something new, so they keep doing new different way because they also do not have privilege to have a LED stage at their disposal, but they are more open to experimenting. So they will try something, and then after, even if we make mistake while doing virtual production, we will correct it in VFX. So that is our take so far, and I do wish that those conversations change very soon in India as well, and hopefully people like Kamal can introduce a lot of DOPs and directors to take up these things, and we will have less of argument and more of happy conversations.
Thank you. Yes, Karan.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Rutul and Sandeep were saying, and I think, in my opinion, right, the one thing I've noticed that kind of backfires is if you treat it like a technology demonstration, they're not really interested and they don't care, right? To them as creatives, I mean, they want to see how it helps their vision, how they can achieve it faster. So I try and take out a lot of the technical lingo and just really show them how it works. Put devices in front of them, so it's I mean, with something like Simulcam, it's so instantaneous that you're no longer looking at a green screen when you look at the monitor. You're actually looking at what would be the CG set extension. So those types of things click much faster, in my opinion. So I think it's really to demystify the tech and not really make it about the tech, although it is technology at the end of the day. But it's like you give it to them as a tool that, and I think to avoid a bad first experience is very, very important, because if it doesn't work out the first time, they just think this whole thing is not ready, and they hesitate to proceed. So I think making sure they have a good first experience, I think that's something we really want to make sure happens each and every single time.
Yeah, I agree to that as well. I mean, that. Yeah. So continuing, Sandeep, this is a question, just linked to the previous one. So that's as well. I mean, how do you ensure that the previous and the tech quiz, if it's done for the project, that it stays locked, in the pre-production and is not altered? And if you're done a previous and tech quiz, how much buffer of changes do you generally keep between, what the previous has been done and then what will be shot on the stage? So just keeping that consideration during the previous stage.
See, previs is actually a stage where you do a lot of visualization. Okay, if just your animation team or VFX team, you lose them, just do something for previs without director and DOP in sync with it. So you have to know that VFX team is not a filmmaker team. Okay, so they don't understand a lot of dynamics of filmmaking. So there is at the same time your client is little overwhelmed with the visualization or using this technology. So sometimes they'll agree on something. Oh fuck, this is good, this looks interesting, because they're right now overwhelmed with the technology, so they're excited about it, so they'll approve something. But later at the stage when they edit and all, and say, "Arey, my storytelling is not coming through." So that's when you come back. So it is like as Karan said, demystify thing firstly and show them as a tool where aapka shot kya hai, all those things, like make them move around, your character is there, all those things you do it properly, like, and keep doing little iteration. Just do as much as possible, explore in the previous stage as much as possible, because you're using a real-time tool, so you have enough time. But you go later when you don't work on the real-time tool, your pipeline, when it gets locked, and you're not working in an agile agile way of working, then you're locked. Because if you go in the end and then you realize that no, this is not working, you'll go back to the drawing board. So spend as much time on your drawing board, so that they don't have options to change later, because they would have put everything in the edit. Don't treat the previous as ki 4 shot there on 5 shot there on. Just like how they shoot, master shot, close, all those things, give them option to edit. So once they edit it, they have to stick with that, because they already have thing. So that's what I think. And animation is something where we can't afford to do a lot of options and all. So might as well spend more time in the previous stage, low quality render and all. And each stage, if you show them iteration wise that, okay, basic blocking, locked it. Then you go next step. So finally you're coming to the final polished result. But if you start with something which is like almost finished with all the detail and all those things, later if they ask you to change, your project file is so heavy that it will cost you more. So incorporating agile workflow is very important, and something which Indian studios are forgetting, because we used to work with generalists earlier. Now we work for Hollywood, so we are working as an assembly line. So we most of the people don't know what happens after this. Okay, so we want a specialist in everything, but we don't have artist. So we have specialist in assembly line. So that's where is the problem. Like when I have to do compositor to do something, they'll say iska DMP lagega. I mean, they want to do a matte painting for that, but it's something they can open a Photoshop and do small patch and come. But they're dependent on a Photoshop guy, because compositing guy doesn't know how to operate Photoshop. In some studio, it's about license, but many studio it is not. So that is also that's why the older school people could do a lot of things. So even if they don't know new software, on the job, when there's a job, they can open the software, learn it, finish the job, and because they know what they want final result. So we need to start adopting this kind of old way of working, which is the generalist way, artist way, if we want to improve our industry, local industry, not Hollywood. Hollywood is working fine as an assembly backend, we are working fine. But if you want to have better quality in Indian thing, we need to have more artists becoming thinker and thinker. So that way, whatever you do in your previous thing, because your artist is also thinking like filmmaker, so automatically his suggestion, everything will be appreciated by the director, so they won't have changes. And directors have afterthought and all, changes and all, but once you know that this kind of thing happen, you will have all in previous stage all those options ready.
I totally agree. Because I can understand, like one good thing is like about what you mentioned is about the capability that we have right now to get the renders quicker. Just see the changes, do it. Because I remember doing it around 8 years back when it was not a game engine, it was Maya and the textures were not high poly. So when we actually showed it, it looked like a previous, but that was like not, not they could not feel, the realistic which was out there. Now the render quality has gone up, and that sometimes gets a wow factor from when we show at the previous stage. But I agree what you mentioned that having an insight of a director or DOP at the previous stage would definitely help reduce the chances of reiterations a lot. The next question is for Karan. And just wanted to check, how helpful has been the game engines has been for your projects. And this is including all the mediums, so that's film interactive installations, museums, as well as the animated animation series, etc.
And absolutely. So let me put it this way, right? I haven't done a single project that hasn't used Unreal in my career. It's the first tool I started using, 7 years ago, and pretty much built my career on top of it. Um, what keeps me going is how versatile it is at a tool, because I've used it across so many different workflows, right? Starting with kind of projection mapping and interactive installations, to VR, to engineering simulations, which we were doing a lot of as well. And now it's more VFX and film. But to me, the pipeline that if you build a strong pipeline, you can cater to different verticals really well. So I think this is just another application. VFX and animation is just another application of the game engine. But moving forward, I think one of the biggest changes that we'll see, and I think this is incredible, and you actually see this happening a lot in like the automotive pipeline right now, like right from their first design phase to where they're actually designing the vehicle, looking at what the interior. So game engines are used there, up until the HMI system that is inside the vehicle, and finally in the marketing. So in the actual like virtual production video or whatever that comes out, it's being used there, and the interoperability is key, right? And we're seeing that now with kind of games and film as well. Like you have game spin-offs of a film, and obviously film spin-offs of a game are also happening increasingly more. The cool thing is your assets can jump between these different pipelines. So I think that's really awesome. And to me, it's just enabling it. And we look at, if you were to draw a vector to see where game engines are going with, the advent of real-time ray tracing and all of that. Like this has been the last couple of years. You draw that vector out into the future, and I think times start to look pretty exciting. And I think entertainment itself gets disrupted.
I think, yeah, I think I'm just amazed by all the projects that you've been doing with Unreal Engine, like, from art installations to everything, and, yeah, it's amazing. So, the other, similar question I would like to also ask, Ritul, because I remember we had a conversation regarding the fashion and this thing. So just wanted to know your thoughts, like what other mediums can game engines be used, and how it can eventually help VFX and film industry as well. So,
Yeah. So one being very close to my heart is the fashion industry. They're doing really, really well. So I've been talking to many people who are using Marvelous and trying to get render out of Unreal. There are a little bit of glitches still. So a lot of people, like say, for example, softwares like Draper are working to be the plugin who can take all the cuttings that you do in fashion inside Unreal and simulate inside Unreal. However, it's on a beta stage, so it will take a little bit of time. Other than that, the ready pipeline is Flow 3D and Marvelous, along with all the accessories and shoes and everything, because while you're introducing, you did mention that I worked in advertising extensively, so there were a lot of fashion brands, makeup and beauty brands that I handled. And also during my college, I did little bit of fashion construction. So if one of these things are very close to my heart. So that is the industry I'm following apart from visual effects, or you can say along with visual effects. And I do plan to eventually merge these two. So if in the future there are live action shorts where we are going to do clothes simulation, then just shoot them with the basic clothes and add entire clothing on top of it. And or for second example is ArcViz, which is being fantastic, like architectural drawings to bringing them inside Unreal and doing really realistic lighting inside Unreal. So those communities are doing extremely well. And there I could see huge potential, because in India, like you want to go buy a house or you want to go rent a house, and all the demos are really bad. But you log into any US website and you say, oh, I want to walk inside this house, and their demo, which are done using the similar technology, are fantastic. So while just walking through that digital pipeline and seeing the house, you can just pretty much say, here is my card, please take my money. And here you see the house in person or you see it on the computer, it just doesn't have that, what you call, emotion to it. So it's to do with technology, it's to do with engines like this and artists like that who can bring all the art together in a very technical way and impress each and every one of us. So like that is one. The third being like automobile industry. Like for example, recently one of my friend who is a matte painter concept designer joined Tesla to be part of their team, which is quite exciting because like, when have you heard that you're a visual effects artist and you can dream of leaving all that to just go and work in probably making a rocket, the new age rocket that is going to take us to Mars or Moon or whatever the next place will be. So those are the three industries apart from visual effects, which could blend and become one eventually if the engines keep improving, and all these artists can kind of become part of visual effects industry and we can become part of their industry, because for them to showcase their work, they have to eventually take it into visual effects pipeline and render it and put it on their website. So we can all merge together and make a bigger, stronger community.
Good. Thank you, Ritul and Karan, for your insights. Again, the next question is headed towards Ritul as well, which is how much ready do you think game engines are to replace the traditional rendering pipeline for CG, largely animation, I would say, animated series. And this is for Sandeep and Ritul, both.
So for 3D, 100%. When it comes to live action, I can say 50% because there are a lot of glitches still happening. Like recently, yesterday night only, Nuke announced that they are building a plugin which will allow people to render out passes, because I did like the idea of, so I'm introducing a little bit of Unreal to my compositors, and they are complaining only about one thing, that how do we take passes, because it doesn't give us control. Like, we are just doing the color grading on top of the render and adding a little bit of smoke. So that was the complaint we had, and seeing that news yesterday on FX Guide, I think, was quite, which was quite fascinating, because that was one of the things that were missing. However, it will take time. We did try Houdini plugin, which is Houdini Bridge for Unreal, and we did face some of the issues which we are trying to sort it out. So when it comes to live action blending with Unreal, I think I could say it will take about 6 months of time till all these other DCC tools figure out how to be like kind of synchronized with Unreal. When it comes to fully 3D, you can pretty much just take your thought inside Unreal and put out the full content out of just one click. So yeah.
So, I mean, before Sandeep and also Karan answer this, I also want to add cinematic trailers as well. Just to this, the same question, but how is it compared to traditional rendering? Like, where has it reached when in terms of replacing it, your Maya or any renderer that you use to get your cinematic trailers out or your animated series? Yeah. So Sandeep,
to me,
Sandeep can start here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't pay attention. See, there's no straight answer to this, because it just depends on what kind of treatment you are looking at for your render, what style you are looking at. You can do a very clean 3D 100% out from Unreal or Unity or any other engine. And then there are some certain treatment which has certain shader which you are particular about those shaders and textures and all. It will have a lot of artifacts. So that's when you need to go out of something else. So it doesn't matter what is the if your engine is limited, it should not limit you. You have to find other way, because if the engine has helped you to reach 80%, then find other way to finish your 20% also. So I mean, we can keep debating about whether it is there or not 100%. For some people it is there. It gives 100% to some people, some style. But I mean, there are some people in the audience who have worked with, and who I know some of them, the kind of like issues they had with the final result, and they had to change the pipeline, but not completely abandoned. They were there 80%, so they had to try out something else, and it worked for them. So it's there, and it's not yet there, and it's going to get better only. So with hardware and improvement, it's going to get better. But whatever we have right now, it's good enough.
Got it. Karan, what's your thought on this? I mean, also with what Unreal Engine 5 when it's coming out, like.
So I think the future is definitely looking very bright. Like I was talking earlier about, drawing a vector into the future, and yeah, in time for sure. But I think there are certain, like, it's situational, right? And there are certain complex, like, effects. I mean, game engines still struggle with things like, translucency, subsurface scattering is not entirely great yet. I mean, and even with Unreal now, actually, if you look at, the direction they're moving in sometimes with tools like Movie Render Cube, where you can do multiple samples. So I think a little bit of both is needed depending on what kind of output ultimately you're looking for. So I'd say, yes, there are certain environments, certain use cases that are fully ready today for real-time workflows, and there are some that are just going to take longer. So in that case, I do see real-time pipelines in any case supplementing a traditional workflow, but not necessarily always replacing it right now. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I would say not. It's more complementing, not replacing, but it's always complementing.
Yes.
And in a very, very good way. So, like, the kind of thing it has shortened the pre-production stage and the beginning part. That itself is a massive leap. I mean,
yeah.
a project which would take us 2 or 3 years, that can be almost ready in like 6 to 8 months or 1 year. So it has reduced massive that time in the beginning.
True. I definitely agree to that. I mean, the next question is for both Rutul and Sandeep, and we can start with Rutul. Is basically how are VFX or animation studios adapting to game engine in their existing pipeline? I think it relates to the first question that we had. But is it regularly being used in your projects, or is it still in the testing phase that it's still out there backlog? We're just testing it and not to deploy it on the projects yet.
Okay. So for us, we do use it regularly for presenting and a previous purpose. When it comes to final stuff, yes, for some of the in-house content that we are developing, we are fully planning around Unreal. And why I use the word Unreal and not like all gaming engine is because it is only around Unreal. Like, I did try multiple other things, but I do like certain aspects of Unreal in particular. And when it comes to compositors, they are always on one project to other project. They're all like kind of waiting in line, saying that when will you finish this testing and when will you come to us to train us? And yeah, hopefully like early next year, we are planning to train pretty much 25% of our team to be able to open the software and use it. There is just one particular problem why studios are little slow in adapting. Unreal, unlike every other software, it's little heavy in terms of assets. So if you give it to everyone in your pipeline, they'll fill up all the machines, all the data, like by downloading various things, and don't know how to actually handle it. So you have to create a proper pipeline first before you start handing it over to your artist. And the second thing is, it requires internet. It doesn't work without it. And all the studios, because of the all requirements from bigger other studios that they don't allow internet, they don't want any leak, they don't want their content being downloaded by mistake or our computer getting hacked. So giving access to machine on a production level, which will also open up our entire networking pipeline with Unreal, we have to think of splitting two things, and that is the only reason I see as a roadblock for us to fully go like Unreal way. So like with Maya, it works without it because whether it be Maya, whether it be Blender, whether it be Nuke, you don't really need to update it every 5 seconds. So that is one limitation why Indian studios or even for our abroad brands, they are little hesitant on giving Unreal to each and every machine and every artist.
Right. Sandeep, what are your thoughts on this as well? So, I mean, is it something that you are still, hesitant to use it for the final pixels, or is it something?
No, we don't start with that. It's like I've been using Unreal from a long time, and I started pushing whoever I know. I told them that since it's available free, just learn it. This is the future because there's no harm learning one more tool which is powerful, available, which can do so much, and it allows. It's crazily addictive because it allows you to play around, do a lot of creative thing. So when I have a project, if I need to prototype it, I do it in Unreal. So that way I know what I have to do. Even if it is a physical, I'm not going to use Unreal in the end. Even if it is going to be live action, I do use it to block and have my planning and all those things. And if it is CG based, I take it all the way till the final thing and then see based on the time available. If we can push, we are getting good result from Unreal. Fine, not migrate it to something else, but take it till where it is. So idea is to use it. It's become an important tool in our workflow. So
Good. Thank you. I think the next question is for Karan. Karan, I mean, due to flexibility options between game engines and the DCC tools, that's Maya, Houdini, and other softwares out there, sometimes there can be a lot of unwanted data loss during the import export, so or due to various reasons. So how do you deal in maintaining that consistency of data between a web vendor, who's out there, and and basically between a VFX and between a web vendor and a virtual production service provider, who are basically, so are you like adopting any pipelines like USD or anything that you would like to discuss on?
Yeah, I think so. USD seems to be the best contender to take on and solve this problem. One being an open standard, second it being non-destructive, right? And I think it stands a strong chance of the interoperability problems that seem to happen when you're bouncing assets across, and ultimately it's a non-destructive format. It's like I think, and the fact that it has layers, and enhances, so you can take in the layers you want and need, and even for, integrating assets within assets becomes easier as well with USD, and we're seeing a lot of software take to that, right from your more traditional CG software like Maya and Blender now have strong USD support. Unreal has it coming in. Omniverse is kind of built on top of it. So I think it's definitely something like that is ultimately what's going to make sure that that transfer is seamless. And I think we're actively leveraging USD workflows and diving deeper.
Thank you, Karan. I mean, again, same goes for Rutul, and also Sandeep. If you can also share your thoughts after Rutul. It's basically, because a lot of the studios, who have been basically, whom I know in India, has this question, a larger question, that how do we get adopted into the, if we want to use game engines in our pipeline, and that's a bigger question, because we generally make our assets in different preferred DCC tools. So how that has been like a transition. So we can start with Rutul and then Sandeep after that.
So I don't have any partiality between DCC tool of all kinds. Like we use Blender, sometimes Maya, depending on what exactly we want to do. So even for Unreal, I am still using Blender to build certain customized assets. And for various reasons, like as you guys who have used Unreal know that some of the things are not possible, like how the way we work in Blender, like how we join two walls versus how we create curves, or versus how we cut certain parts in the wall to create particular designs and things like that. So those things kept in mind. Like artists are always eager to learn new things, and artists would want exposure to new things so that they can learn and grow in their own career. And when it comes to for studios to give that power to artists is again like time, like because we are always doing one project after the other project after the other project, and most of these projects are preset and coming with a very traditional expectation. But for example, if we are stuck in one of the projects which requires some amount of matte painting, we will also open one ready asset in Unreal, put like a little bit of sky, a little bit of water, and like kind of create the 3D matte painting and render it out and take the render inside Nuke and comp it. So those are the flexibility these days we have. Recently, I encountered, we were asked to pitch on one of the project, which was kind of in a very short time period. Like they wanted output in 1 week. Although we did not do it, but they asked us to pitch for it. And they had this thing where all the books were flying and getting compiled inside a bookshelf. And inside Megascan, there are a lot of books already ready. And like another one was where they wanted particular interior or outside sand dunes where cactus are growing and kind of blooming into roses. So things like that, we just picked ready assets from Unreal, put it on the ready background and rendered it out in less than probably 1 day and send it to them, and they were very happy with it. So that is the difference. Like it would have, if we had to do it, we would have not even touched the project or not even said, okay, we will do a test shot if Unreal or Ready Asset did not exist. If Megascan was not there, artists themselves will say this will take 3 weeks. So I myself came from a texturing background where I remember spending weeks on just one asset versus right now just logging in Megascan and downloading that same thing in less than 5 minutes and using it. So it kind of makes us a little bit, sad that these things didn't exist 10 years ago. But now that it does, and I wish that every artist gets a chance to experience the same, same level of output that everybody else abroad are doing it, because all the Megascan, everything is free. Anyone can download it, even in their home machine, and experiment with it. And given if we get a project which are kind of hybrid, then we can give specific training to existing traditional 2D or 3D artists, and they can slowly start adapting Unreal or any gaming engine for that matter.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Sandeep, so your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not particularly biased with any software. I was more of a 3D Studio Max user coming from game industry, and I did pretty much everything in 3D Max. Like even my composites used to be in 3D Max using texturing thing, because that time they were new. Compositing is something which I learned much later, and I've also used Blender for quite a lot, like from the early stage when it used to be in kilobytes and all those things, and it used to have game engine. You could author your own small engine, so we used to play around a lot. And I've been pushing a lot of people to learn these kind of software which are powerful and freely available. But most of the time artists would always say that that studio they use only Maya, so I don't want to learn something which they will not use. And I would always tell them that, see, you have a software which you can install in your home and you can keep practicing instead of installing a pirated software in your system. It's better to install a open source software and explore more, because if you can do whatever people are doing on Maya, people will look at you as an artist, not as a software operator. So that is more important. But of late, I've seen from past 4-5 years, people have started adapting, especially when bigger studios have become open to, say, they started with motion graphics department using Blender. That's a good start. So, but they know that, okay, this is so powerful. This can do this. You can do hair, fur. You can do character animation. So more and more people are. So I'm using firstly, I don't have a studio where I can decide what. But whoever I work with, the teams and all, I keep telling them, freelancers and all that, use Blender, so that between the different team, it's easy. We export files and all those things.
Sorry.
And some people who are very good with Maya, and if we need their skill, obviously it's their choice, it's artist choice. So whoever is good with whatever, you need to use his strength in his playground. I mean, the playground in which he's more comfortable.
True, I agree. So I mean, just going to the concluding question. So and then we can open the floor if we want to if we want to ask questions to any of the other panels, and then we can take up the questions from the chat. So the concluding question is basically sort of a broader question, but we'll try to sum it up in 60 seconds each, so that we have 5 minutes left for the questions to the audience questions. The question is, where do you see the future of game engines in animation, VFX, and other non-film mediums? So we can start with, like, on my screen from left to right. So Ritu, Karan, and then Sandeep. So yeah, if you can just share your thoughts on the same.
Sorry, Parth, could you just repeat your question?
Sure. So it's okay. So basically, it's, where do you see the future of game engines in animation, VFX, and other non-film mediums?
So it's here to stay, is what my one-line answer is. It's here to stay, and I think everybody should, like, technology is technology. Like, once the bullet leaves the gun, there is no way it is coming back. So Unreal or any other gaming engine is like a bullet in terms of technology, and it is out there and it's going to grow. It is making our life easier in a way, but it's also making our life a little more difficult sometimes because it's new. There are glitches, there are problems, and we have a set pipeline, ready pipeline, tried and tested pipeline, and we are entering in a zone where we are experimenting with new things on a live project. So yeah, it's here to stay, and everybody should welcome it and learn it. It's free. It's fabulous. So yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Karan.
I mean, I totally agree with Rutul. And if I were to add to that, I think, the big shift we're going to see is, kind of non-linear storytelling, interactive cinema, like I started with. I mean, there are certain games that make a very strong case for that, looking at where some cinematic games are headed. Ultimately, everyone wants to be, the hero of their own story. And when you can push that further, right, with interactivity, then everybody's going to try and take advantage of that. And I think the push, again, is we're seeing this a lot more, and I think ultimately that's where, in technologies like the metaverse, we'll see more people kind of migrate to that form of non-linear entertainment. And obviously, linear entertainment is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, like Rutul said. So the impact of game engines it's already started. It's only going to increase. But on the flip side, I think filmmaking will borrow a little bit. And I think that this intersection is great, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, and Sandeep, your thoughts?
Nothing much to add. I mean, everything's been said. Yeah, I mean, there is an old saying in the game industry that when evolution happens, you have to evolve or you will die. So evolve or die. That is the whole thing of the game industry, and it applies. Now we have seen the changes in our life. We are the people who've seen the transition of mobile phone from normal phone to mobile phone, and some of our generation is in part of this development. But the new generation has not seen anything else. They're born with the iPad and Android thing in their hand, so they don't know life without it. Okay, is it wrong or right? I mean, we can debate, but thing is that now what they can do with it, whatever they have it. So the technology is changing. We have created things for making things better, and then we have next generation, which is user, which is a power user. They will do much more things with whatever technology we are developing, and they will add on more and more. So like we can say, okay, mera ho gaya, or we can keep evolving with that. Otherwise, if we don't evolve, we'll be soon irrelevant. I mean, we'll go redundant. Simple as that.
I don't know.
I mean, thank you, for sharing your insights, all three of you. I mean, we have some wonderful questions, from the audience, and, we have left with 3 minutes. But, so I think we just wanted to check if you have any questions for each other, which you would like to ask, you know, to any one of you.
Yeah, I think there's some great questions in the audience. I've actually answered a couple of them
Yeah.
already in text, but any of the other panelists. But I think there's one that I'm answering right now, right, which is about how do creators who are largely deficient when it comes to technology, and how do they interact with VFX houses who are capable, given time and budget constraints. I think the really cool thing about this, like when people think of a story, it's done without any constraints, but the moment you want to put it into production, you start thinking of all sorts of like real constraints come up, like how are you going to build like a flying dragon or whatever it may be. I think at least the way we're tackling this problem is largely with education itself, which is why Green Rain doubles as a training center. And in that regard, we work with a lot of VFX houses as well. But when it comes to creatives, I think open houses work really well. Giving them the chance to play around with this technology first allows them to start thinking of what they can do with it. So ultimately, it becomes like an additional tool that they can use, and they don't need to know how to operate the technology. They just need to understand how it serves them. So once that's done, I think that bridges the gap. So I think my simple one-word answer to that is education.
Right. I mean, we also have Madhusudanan sir in the audience, which I just saw right now. It's great to have sir. I think he has a question to, I mean, basically a question about blocking in filming. How do you do a blocking over there? Sandeep, do you want to take that question? Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, blocking is same traditional way. In real life, we have some dummy things we put together, put a camera, and you say, okay, my shot is like this. Unreal, you can do the same thing. You have assets from the marketplace. You put them quickly together. Put your camera. You have all the cameras available. Whatever camera you're going to use those lenses, and start blocking. It's as simple as that. I mean, I think for that you don't need to spend a lot of time on with Unreal. I think, am I right, Karan? I mean, it's just
I think it's the easier end of the spectrum for sure. Like when I compare, kind of freeways or shot blocking to like an engineering simulation or something, I think it's much easier to get up and running with shot blocking and that type of workflow.
So it's just about setting up your project file and bringing some assets, putting the camera, and start playing around. Simple as that. Yeah. So, and once you do that, I think that's asked by Madhu. You are not going to stop. You will go further into it.
Absolutely. And just to add to what Sandeep was saying, I think certain tools like Dragonfly and all, you may find them incredibly useful to accelerate your Unreal workflow. Leveraging other applications like VCam, will really help you kind of more intuitively block your shots.
Yeah. To just end that question, Madhusa, I think for if you largely speak about Unreal Engine for simulations, I think a Houdini or a Maya cache is the direct workflow for now to get it into Unreal Engine. If that's the question. But yeah, right now the geometric cache is the solution for getting it over there. I'm just a bit happy. Yeah, the panel is over. I think Rutul has another session to join in, but. Thank you very much. I'm quite happy that we finished up on time, with all the questions that we had. There were some extra questions that we had, but we're always there in the industry to catch up with each other. But thank you, each of you, for the time. Thank you, Rutul. I know you need to hop off, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thanks, my pleasure. Thank you.